You're welcome. All right, hey, thank you for showing up. I forego the pedestal because I think it's maybe nicer also that we meet on eye level, which I think is a lot of what the VR learning is about. What I want to do is I want to share with you how we came to that solution that we built and what it meant to us, because it's a very personal story for me. So in my former life, before I founded Resourceful Humans, grew a beard and became old, I was the head of HR of one of Europe's largest independent video game companies, Crytek, which was quite a journey. And you might know the games Far Cry, Crysis, maybe ring a bell. Very epic first-person shooter company. And what we did at the time was that we tried to transform the entire company from being a hierarchy to working as a network enterprise, because we felt games can be made better if they're not in a hierarchical way, because we had so many disciplines working together. And it was super hard. And it was super hard finding people who could help us doing this cultural transformation. This is what we did back then to try and get into this space. We're trying to visualize the company literally as a network and helping people to understand the nature of the organization in a different way. And that's what we're doing now also at Resourceful Humans, that we are really using visuals in a new way to show companies they're actually complex systems, they're organic. But it's super hard to transform from the worldview of it's a hierarchy, it's a pyramid, to it's a living, complex organism. So what could I do as a leader? Obviously, I read books. I read a lot of books and tried to educate myself on how can I help, how can I support my organization as an HR leader. And then back before this book came out, there was a guy who posted on his website and said, I'm doing a similar thing. I'm trying to transform my team from in a very hierarchical command and control system to a much more networked system. And I said, oh, so cool, can we talk? His name was David. I didn't know what David did. And David said, yes, we can talk. Next Thursday, 2 a.m. your time. I'm like, 2 a.m. my time? What a dick. You know, why would you say that? This is like a way to not talk to me. But I was like, it's so rare. I need to talk to people. I need to help my organization. So I showed up 2 a.m. I went into the office at Crytek back then, and I went on Skype, and up came this really infuriating sound in the background, like, and then David was on there like, hey, can you hear me? And like, no, dude, I cannot hear you. It's very hard to understand you. There's so much background noise. And he's like, yeah, give me a second. Like, clonk, 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 clonk. And then it was better. We talked for about 15 minutes, and after that, I had a major man crush. I was ready to have his babies at that point, basically. He had done exactly the things that we're doing, and I was just in love with the way that he did it. And I was like, hey, David, man, you haven't even told me, like, what company do you work for? He's like, company? Dude, I don't work for a company. I'm a submarine commander. And I was like, huh? And he's like, yeah, that's why I can only talk to you at this time, because we only surface at certain times, and what you heard was like the wind noise from the conning tower. At the time, I was like literally looking around for cameras, like, are you shitting me? Like, is that hidden camera thing or something that my team set up? But it was true. So David, later on, he wrote a book about this called Turn the Ship Around. It's a fantastic business book. I highly recommend that you pick it up. There's also an audio book about it. But after this, you'll want to play the game. So what I said as a leader, what I want my organization to have is not read the book, not hear it from him in a keynote, but what is it in the socialization of a freaking career military guy who was drilled for decades to give orders, to have one way of leadership in his head, to turn around and do something completely different. Because what he did was basically said, I'm not giving any orders on my submarine anymore. He gave no more orders. He said, I'm not giving any orders. I tell you what the mission is, and then you guys have to figure it out. You can ask me questions. There'll be no approval from the captain. It'll be completely intent-based, meaning you will tell me what you're going to do next, and unless somebody vetoes it, we're going to go for it. Sea change. What happened? Well, listen to David.
I'm David Marquet, former commander of the USS Santa Fe. I had a life-changing experience when I was assigned to this ship, the worst in the fleet. And by making changes to the way we treated each other, we had an enormous outcome. We had the best performance, the best retention, and over the long run created the most number of leaders.
Yeah, fascinating story. Best ship in the history, from the worst ship to the best ship. Now, how can I serve that to my organization? Because it doesn't help if only I understand this story, right? And that's where we went to cinematic learning. I see the font hasn't been installed, but just bear with me. I'm going to speed run through the presentation. It's better that we have a discussion after. But cinematic learning for us was how do we merge basically in a happy relationship the idea of a Hollywood movie and immersive storytelling with really learning something in a socialization just like David did on his submarine. What made him change? What was it that changed without being on the nose about what do you need to do? Here's the methodology, here's Agile, implement it. That doesn't work. Never worked, right? So what do we need to do? Let's take a step back. We looked at the available technologies in the market, right? And I already heard from my colleague Rasmus, who is here in the audience, that I'm going to get a lot of shit for this because I was trying to put this on the grid of how valuable, how not valuable, and entertaining and not entertaining the things are that I see in the space. And the least valuable, least entertaining thing I see is the VR meeting rooms. Because for me, it was really like, okay, so now we have a VR meeting in space or in a space station or in a jungle. And it wears off, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we need to communicate. If there's good ways to do it, all right. Not particularly thrilling or valuable for me. Then there are things like, the digital twins. We're learning about machinery being translated into VR, learning how to operate something new, or even how to drive a digger or something like that. So there's safety-related things, and these are already more valuable, still not very entertaining in the way that they're done. On the other side, we have things like, the Apollo 11 experience or Half-Life Alyx, super entertaining, but you don't learn much, right? It's not very valuable other than consumption in terms of entertainment as a video game. And we wanted to go up there, what we call cinematic learning. We wanted to, to get the value of those, but with the entertainment factor of the computer games that we have in the market. So what then is cinematic learning? There's obviously a very dry, bone-dry definition that we wrote down, but basically what we believe is wake me and make me. Get people's attention and then have core mechanics in the game that sort of in an inception way teach you something to come to a revelation that you yourself feel like, oh, I learned that. Nobody made me do it. Actually, I learned it. And I think you just said it in your introduction. The worst way to learn is you learn it alone, then it's just knowledge, as Albert Einstein says, as Amy, our AI over there, says, the second best thing, the silver thing, is teach somebody else. It's less classroom, more Hollywood. But play together is what really makes it stick in your mind. Playing together. Think about in your life. Whenever you play together, you really had memorable experiences that anchored these kind of learnings. So that's what we did. We tried to bring the drama of submarines. I mean, as a German, we all had to watch Das Boot like 150,000 times. So we know about submarines and we know about getting our ass kicked in them. So talking to a Navy commander and using this setting of the submarine for learning, this drama of what's happening under the seas is a fascinating concept, right? And we wanted to push that idea of emotionality because the one thing you learn in games is it's completely voluntary. Nobody plays a computer game because they have to. They want to. So we wanted them to learn. Make it sexy. How do we do it? So we have our Spartans here, very small development team in Barcelona, just 10 people, 3 seniors that we took over from the AAA times in Crytek, so people who really knew what it's like to make 300 million euro blockbuster games that take 3 years to develop. And we try to bring that together with a couple of very junior people who come in with a fresh mindset. And we applied the AAA framework that came with how do you make an actual video game? So how was Crysis made? And we tried to apply that one-to-one to how our cinematic learning experiences at Resourceful Humans made. But I can talk about it a lot. Let's take a look.
Congratulations, officers. You've been selected for a special mission, testing and operating the newest submarine in the fleet, the USS Santa Fe.
wars. Captain David Marquet took the most lethal killing machine ever designed by man and did what no captain had done before. He turned followers into leaders. Experience the incredible journey of the U.S. Navy nuclear submarine Santa Fe. Go deep and witness the unbelievable turnaround that took Santa Fe from the worst to first and made it the best performing ship in the fleet ever. The Dive. At crush depth, meet the leader that you truly are.
So basically what the VR Dive is David's book talking back to you. Every lesson that's in the book is being turned into a core mechanic. So there's no David on board that tells you, and in this chapter I'm telling you one thing, and the lesson of that is this and this, but the lessons are being transmitted through the gameplay. You can already see, so what you see here is the main stage of where we're playing. You have the captain in the back, the navigator in front, weapons and engineer, because we've specifically designed this environment for leadership teams. So our market is executive teams, because we say if you want to do a cultural change or the things that we were aiming for, change happens at the top. Happens with the behavior of the leadership team. The gameplay is completely interconnected so that all of these stations have something to do that is unique to their stations, but others that are dependent on the other player. So for example, the engineer has all the nuclear power, so navigator can't move unless the engineer gives power to that station. So they constantly have to communicate and collaborate. And for the particular missions that they're in, we call this a sort of frog in the boiling water syndrome. It gets more and more difficult as they go along. So they can familiarize themselves with the controls first, and then the gameplay takes over and we tip them into now focus on the leadership aspect of it. We also wanted to have something which is very stationary, because we knew that our target audience probably would suffer from motion sickness quite a lot. So having something that is closed, we didn't have an artificial window in there or anything. That's why we had the holo table that we created in the middle. So we minimized the risk for motion sickness. We had a little bit of an animation even for when you shoot a torpedo, the room would shake a little bit, and already there people were like getting nauseous. So we even had to dial that down. However, what it does is, and any of you who have ever been to any corporate workshop or anything, you know that usually people in the breaks, they go out and they check their email or they do something else because the workshop is meh, kind of like that. But there, the only thing that they talk about is on the submarine. Because as they go through this story, they don't perceive this as a fictional event, they perceive it as something real. And that is really the most magical thing I can say about the cinematic learning experiences. They get sucked in so much. They forget that they're being observed. They forget that there's anything around them. They forget that they're being watched. They're on the submarine and they have an incredible adventure to go on. And that's what they lose themselves in. And the pattern of behavior that you have there to watch them and to feed them back to the team, incredibly valuable. So that's what it looks like from the other side. If you look from the captain's perspective, that's what we from the outside see when we look in there and we see them play. You have different chairs there next to them, so you can teleport around different stations so people can sit next to each other and help each other out. But as you can see, we went for a completely different look from an actual submarine, because what we wanted is an environment that supports the learning. We did not build a submarine simulator. There are much better submarine simulator out there. The purpose of this game was to teach them something. And the setting is, because nobody knows about submarines anyways, they weren't like, that's not a real submarine, that's not how it's like. But what we also can go is, I don't know if any of you know that meme, but can it run Crisis? We were going for extremely high fidelity HTC Vive Pro. We wanted to minimize on one side motion sickness, but on the other side we wanted people to just go, holy fuck, this looks awesome. Right? And they really do. It is very high poly, it is incredibly polished, and it has the look of a real video game. From the start, we built it as network play, so you can do it in one room, but you can also do it remotely, and the people can connect via servers, and that was a blessing for us for the COVID times. We started with an immersion, so it's a non-violent gameplay. You can completely go through it without ever shooting one torpedo, which none of them ever do. So in the beginning, you have this rescue submarine that you drive around the harbor, and then you dock with the Santa Fe. So they literally get immersed into the experience first. We try to really take the players into the hand and say, get over your fear of VR, dive into this, see it as something pleasurable and enjoyable, and arrive in the game. We built a lot of tutorials in there because we wanted to have no hurdles for them to focus on the gameplay and on the learning experience. So whatever we could do to help them forget about the VR controls, we did. We built a smart sandbox, what we call. So the sandbox environment is basically that you can go anywhere. It's an open world, but all the mission parameters in the sandbox are connected so that you still learn no matter where you go. Our AI learns from this, so even though you have an open world decision making, you have an emotional narrative that draws the people through the game. So you have your missions, and if you choose to not go for one mission, you get drawn into the next mission. And Amy learns from this and helps the players push them into the learning zones. So the game is smart in that way and also learns for replayability. So the game adapts to how the players play so that it has a high level of replayability. We can also interfere in the game, so from the outside we can place boats or push them along a little bit, but usually the AI is taking care of it just fine. We can also interact with them while they're on the submarine. So we had a mission from, we pretend to be Captain Biden. If we really want to be pissy, we are Donald Trump. So we introduced cinematic moments. We have the periscope in there, which is always fun when you go down into the water in VR with the periscope up. We have remote coaching so that the captain can actually be on the sub helping you out if you want to. And we have evidence-based coaching. So take a look at this and listen to this.
Get that
Okay.
up, please. That up to...
Yes, move
that
to
please.
this and then.
I see something red at 130. Captain, can you come here and see what I see? Can you see my screen now? So you see a red spot?
Yeah, I see. Yeah. What could that be? Red is trouble.
Probably trouble.
Yeah.
So
Major
should
on
we
video
get
games.
close
Red is
to it
trouble.
and-
No, I think we should go away from it. So telecast a little bit to the left.
Okay. Anyone who knows anything about the torpedoes we have? What is the difference between mode, stingray, and noisemaker? Which one is the best for mines?
Well, I'm going to end with that the end goal of that you can always measure how many people you've saved in the final mission of a sinking ship. No game looks like the other. So even from the outside helping the people, no gameplay is the same. So it's always fascinating to watch these, and people feel like there's really been an impact when they've played these games.
Fantastic, Heiko. Thank you so much. Yeah, please. So I have a whole bunch of questions, but this is for you. We have a couple of minutes left. And maybe, Heiko, if you're around when the time is out and people want to find you outside, if people have more questions. So sure. Anybody got a question, please? And we do only have 3 minutes, so please keep it short and direct. Over to you.
Thank you. Is that on? Yeah. Looks amazing.
Thank you.
2 questions. Is it self-directed? Do people download it and do it themselves in their teams? And then secondly, what's the average duration that somebody would spend in that as a team?
Yeah, so it is self-contained. We're not on Steam or anything, so you get an executable, you can download it, install it on your PC. It's a tethered experience. At this point, we went for the HTC Vive Pro, again, to minimize motion sickness, but we're working on a untethered port now. And the second question is, it depends on the team. You know, I think the more senior they are, we had one slide at the very end, which we call the CEO test. So we had our kids play it. So we made sure that we know how long the average CEO would take. Usually the game takes around 90 minutes, but sometimes they get through in 45, but it really depends which of the missions they choose. maximum gameplay is 90 minutes, 90 to 2 hours. We didn't want to have them in there for too long, again, to reduce risk for headaches and stuff.
All right, excellent, thank you. More questions, please. Yes.
More on the techie side of things. I love it. We run a program called Leading Remote Teams, and this is perfect for them. One of our challenges, though, is like recording, like you know how it is in the LMS, we do record their progress and the mission and whatnot. Is there any type of learning objectives and recording and like success rate and that sort of thing?
What we do is we have a share of voice, so we can measure the open mic time, how much people take, and we correlate that to how many people are saved. Mm-hmm. So you have a coefficient of hard data to say, did you actually let everybody talk? Did everybody get their share of voice? And that usually corresponds to how well they do in the game.
I see.
And then we have a recording of the game that they can look at, which usually they find out that they behave quite different than they think they behaved, right? So the reflection of actual
engagement
evidence
within the game. That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Are we going to squeeze one more? If somebody is very good at asking very short questions, and if not, Heiko, you might be outside for anyone who wants to have a chat. One more time, please give it up for Heiko Fischer.
Thank you, guys.
Excellent.